The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe, first published January 1843. True. Nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in the heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How, then, am I mad? Hearken, and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. In January 1843, Edgar Allan Poe published a story so tightly wound that it's barely 2,000 words long, and it's still assigned in English classes almost 200 years later for one reason. The person telling you the story cannot be trusted, not because he's lying exactly, he tells you exactly what happened, but because everything he believes about himself is wrong. This is the telltale heart, and it's the best introduction there is to what writers call the unreliable narrator. Read that opening again and notice what he's actually doing. He's not describing a crime yet. He's building a legal defense. Every sentence is an argument for his own sanity. My senses are sharper, not broken. Listen to how calm I am. A reliable narrator would just tell you what happened. This one is performing his innocence before the story's even started. And that performance is exactly what should make you suspicious. One word worth keeping. Acute, meaning sharp or intensely sensitive. Here he means his hearing. But you'll hear the word used for pain, for angles, for intelligence too. It is impossible to tell how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object there was none. Passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. One of his eyes resembled that of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. This is the paragraph that unsettles people more than any of the violence later on, because there's no motive here at all. No anger, no money, no revenge. He tells you flatly that he loved the man. He's killing him over an eye, and worse, he's already started separating the old man from the I in his own head, like they're two different things he can deal with separately. That's not something a rational person does. It's the first real crack in his claim to sanity. Delivered so calmly, you might not clock it as a crack at all. Now this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing. But you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. Dissimulation is worth having. It means hiding your true feelings or intentions, putting on a false front. Notice the logic he's using. Madmen know nothing. I clearly know what I'm doing, therefore I'm not mad. It sounds almost reasonable until you realize careful planning and sanity aren't the same thing at all. A person can be both meticulous and completely insane. This is the engine of the whole story. The more he insists on his own cleverness, the less the reader trusts him. That gap between what a narrator claims and what the reader actually believes is the textbook definition of an unreliable narrator. And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh so gently. And then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern, all closed, so that no light shone out, and then I thrust in my head. And this I did for 7 long nights, every night just at midnight. But I found the eye always closed. Listen to the rhythm here, not just the words. So gently, All closed, closed. The sentences loop back and repeat, almost like a ritual. Poe is using repetition to put you inside an obsessive mind, not just describe one. That's a technique worth stealing for your own writing. If you want a reader to feel a character's compulsion, let the sentence structure itself repeat and circle the way an obsessive thought does. Presently I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. I knew what the old man felt, and pitied him, although I chuckled at heart. I pitied him, although I chuckled at heart, is one line, and it holds two completely incompatible emotions at once: real human sympathy and real cruel amusement. That contradiction is the most honest thing the narrator says in the entire story. And it's also the most disturbing, because it means he understands exactly what he's doing to another person and finds it funny anyway. That's not someone who doesn't know right from wrong. That's someone who knows and doesn't care, a very different, much darker kind of unreliable. And now, have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over-acuteness of the senses? Now, I say. There came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leaped into the room. He shrieked once only. In an instant, I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. I then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. Notice how short the actual murder is compared to everything before it. Pages of build-up, the watching, the waiting, the sound of the heartbeat rising, and then the killing itself takes about 2 sentences. Poe front-loads all his tension into anticipation, not violence, which is worth remembering if you ever write suspense. The wait is almost always scarier than the event. The night waned, and I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye could have detected anything wrong. Compare the sentence length here to the obsessive, looping sentences from the watching scenes earlier. These are short, flat, almost administrative. Poe strips the emotion out of the writing at the exact moment you'd expect the most horror, and that clinical calm is more unsettling than if he'd written it as a dramatic set piece. The prose itself performs the same false composure the narrator is performing. I led them, at length, to his chamber. I showed them his treasures, secure, undisturbed. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. This is dramatic irony, a different device from the situational irony we talked about with the gift of the Magi. Situational irony is when the outcome is the opposite of what you'd expect. Dramatic irony is when the audience knows something a character doesn't. Here, we know exactly what's under those floorboards while the officers sit there chatting. The narrator's calm isn't calming to read. It's excruciating, because we're waiting for the moment it breaks. But, ere long, I felt myself getting pale and wished them gone. Why would they not be gone? I felt that I must scream or die. Here's the question this story never actually answers. Is that sound real? Or is it entirely in his head? Poe never tells you. It could be his guilty conscience made audible, or it could be closer to a hallucination brought on by whatever's actually wrong with him. That ambiguity is deliberate, and it's why people are still arguing about this story 200 years later. "Villains!" I shrieked. "Dissemble no more. I admit the deed. Tear up the planks. Here, here. It is the beating of his hideous heart." And there's your last vocabulary word. Dissemble, meaning to hide your true feelings or pretend. It shares the same root idea as dissimulation from earlier. Poe bookends the whole story with that same concept, hiding the truth. By the end, hiding is exactly what he can't do anymore. 3 words from this one: acute, dissimulation, dissemble. One open question for the comments: do you think that heartbeat was real or entirely in his head? Next episode, we're moving to Maupassant's The Necklace, another story about wanting something so badly it costs you everything. Subscribe so you don't miss it.